Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Well, it is Monday. I don't know already. I need another day in the weekend. I did not get everything done, but hey, we got markets moving. Chinese data still kind of not looking so hot. Let's come over to the charts here. So here we're starting with treasuries. Treasuries have cooled off a little bit. You know, there was quite a bit of mean reversion on Friday. We'll see what they do here this morning. But, you know, the big news last week was, you know, inflation cooling off. And so the treasuries came back quite significantly. And we come over to the equities. Equities kind of showing the same, cooling off a little bit. But we'll see what they do when the equities open. Oil having a little bit of a spike on like some false reports of like a supply extension, something like that. But so there's still some big moves in oil, and they're back a little bit here again because Chinese data not looking so hot. Then we come over here to the metals, gold and silver. Well, gold hasn't gone that well over the last few days, but silver did take another little leg higher there on like what, Thursday? Holding. Copper here, though, you can see there's where it's like, oof, the Chinese data just not looking very good, and so they have come back quite a bit. It's really interesting because like the yuan is not going very well either, and that despite the dollar falling. Not too bad though. They're just below 100 now, 99.6. And then you got Bitcoin taking a little bit of a dip to come back to the bottom of its range, still holding that 3,000 level though. And we should start some music here. Come on. It is. Oh, I am getting it. I'm just not hearing it. I'm not hearing it. You guys could probably hear it. Oh, I never started out my voice meter. That's why. There we go. And good morning, Alan and Octavius. Now you can't hear if I'm quiet. Well, the gate probably shuts it off, but I got a new computer case. And it has all Noctua fans and everything, but it's got that characteristic computer whine to it. The old computer case that I was using, you know, it had the whole like insulation and everything. Like it was practically silent. This thing is not. I don't know. Maybe when I build the next one, I should do the maybe I should do the fans and stuff myself. Maybe they got bad Noctua fans or something like that. Maybe they didn't get the nice ones. Well, the treasuries seem to be selling off here pretty hard. I'm not quite sure what it was that happened at 620. That was, how long ago was that? About 10, 15 minutes ago? Oh, hold on. U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen, we're on a good economic path in the U.S. I've had constructive conversations on the China trip. Dude, did you see this report that Yellen was like tripping balls on her Chinese trip? Quote, trip. Stuck on the second inside day. I don't know. There's a decent amount of volatility here to start out, though, right? Wow. Ford cuts Ford F-150 Lightning prices by as much as $9,979, almost 10K. Been taking short scalps. I mean, it seems like that's the play right now, but probably we get a little bit of pushback here. We'll just see. Well, and they are like right there at that 3.8 again, huh? Yeah. It's like ever since that big move, right? That's kind of where they've been hanging out, isn't it? Let's see here. Joseph Wang. Treasury's shift towards massive bill issuance successfully brought money funds back as marginal bill investors and filled the TGA by draining the RRP. And then his latest post reviews that episode with the latest MMF data and notes. This shift enables an extended quantitative tightening. Just seeing that 3.8 makes me want to take trades, but I don't know. Okay, well, with my headphones on, I can't hear the whine of the new computer case. It still really bothers me. I want to open that up and figure out what it is later today. You know, I'll unplug everything and pull it out, turn it on, and see which fan seems to be making the noise. I've built a new PC and hope it's quiet. Well, the thing that concerns me is I'm thinking that the reason my previous computer was so quiet was primarily the case. Because the case has all sorts of insulation and stuff like that. This one, the front and back of it are almost completely open, right? So the sound can get out quite easily. I don't know. I got 3 fans on the front, and then I got a new cooler, and those are all Noctua. And then I've got the power supply, which is a Be Quiet power supply. And then I've got the video card. So is it the video card that's being loud? I guess it's probably the video card that's being loud. And that would probably be like really insulated from the case, huh? Well, as you know, the primary reason that I wanted a really quiet case was for this stream. I don't think you guys can hear it, so I probably shouldn't worry about it too much, huh? Fractal North case? Oh, yeah, I've seen that one. The one with the like the kind of front panels on the front of it. Well, that should be okay. It's probably not as... So, like, if you really want quiet, you want these cases that have, like, insulation on the inside of them. They're freaking... Man, the case that I had before, so heavy. So I took it over to my brother. I was like, do you want this? I give it to my brother. And I was also looking, oh my gosh. So the case that I got, it has like 3 Noctua fans at the front of it, which I paid to get the Noctua fans put in. And the little cables that it comes with were not long enough to do anything. So I was spent a good portion of Sunday trying to get my hands on like extension cables or something that would get the case fans onto the board, right? So that the fans would run. So I didn't have any of the time to do the editing and record the extra little bit that I wanted for the video. I made those are cardinal mistakes. You got to do the most important thing first, and probably putting the computer in the new case wasn't the most important thing. It was the most fun thing, but I don't know if it was really that much fun. Man, they are already gonna go for a little bit more, huh? So the thing is that this drive doesn't seem to be from any direct catalyst that I can see. I mean, the one thing that is kind of dominating the headlines this morning is Russia terminates Black Sea grain deal. I didn't even look. Wheat should be, up. Wheat up 3%. Copper down 2.3%. Followed by oil, silver, gold, British pound. Oh yes, this sparks my interest. Oh, this is from Eric Peters of One River Asset Management. Blindly positioning against the consensus is not a great strategy to pursue all the time, but when investor sentiment reaches extremes, the risk-reward shifts in interesting ways. There's no better extreme to trade than one where the crowd is wildly one way just when the fundamentals are reversing, so that not only are investors overextended, but they are also wrong about their thesis. Such opportunities are naturally quite rare, but because they are so important, we should always be on the lookout to ensure we get ourselves on the right side. The collapse in global bond markets last year could not have happened without a wildly bullish bond mania that collided with fundamentals that shifted bearish. That trade took a decade or more to set itself up. There are more frequent examples, of course, and having taken less time to build, they tend to run less far. The wildly bearish sentiment around big tech's stocks earlier this year collided with AI. The bullish case for oil collided with the Chinese economy that opened but failed to reignite. These things hurt investors but tend to last just a few quarters. Blah, 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 blah. The one thing virtually everyone believes is unambiguously true is that higher interest rates cause lower inflation. Okay. I think he's going to say something stupid. But imagine that this isn't necessarily the case. What if higher rates lift government interest payments and this leads to expanded budget deficits? Then more money is pumped into the economy and inflation rises. So I don't think that that's what would happen. So if that were to happen, the economy would have to remain strong. You know, this is where I think in a situation like that, interest rates would rise quickly, and eventually, you know, cause things to fizzle, and then they would have to bring the rate step back down. What are some other widely held beliefs that may be wrong? Pretty much everyone still believes that this will be China's century and that Beijing can control its economy. No, I don't think so. So here's the thing with China, is remember that it was only a few months ago that the Chinese basically admitted that their demographic data was incorrect, and that their population was not as high as it was, and that their population amount is on the decline. And so we kind of thought that Beijing would open back up after COVID. The world economy would get stronger, and they would still have like a final hurrah before some of these other issues that the Chinese government is preparing for came along. And then we see how well they fare through it, right? But that's not what happened, because the Chinese economy is just not doing very well at all. Like, they opened things up, but the factories are not making the money. Look, there was a basis point on the short from 20 to 18.5. And the thing that's crazy is that their currency is both depreciating and their exports are going down. So less exports and the currency is weaker. So normally when your currency gets weaker, that makes it easier to export. But that's not happening. So here you're already starting to see the effects of globalism on the wane. Globalism on the wane is hurting the Chinese economy. And so they maybe they never come back. Maybe it's already peaked. I don't know. That's a little, because a lot of the growth that you've seen in equity markets has come from money coming from China. So if that's not there anymore, that's a real hurdle for markets, right? Aging populations and shrinking workforces across every major economy will lead to subdued inflation, because that's what appeared to have happened in Japan. No. So this one's an interesting thing. So I think on that one, they make it too general. So people say, shrinking workforces causes subdued inflation. I don't think it's just that. It's kind of there's a combination of factors that kind of fit under those what I would call generational factors. One of those factors was globalism, right? So if globalism is on the wane, then that component of it comes off, and that was a major component of it, right? Yeah, they're selling this pretty hard, Octavius. I have not gotten myself involved because it's a Monday, but it's kind of starting to get hard for me to watch this and not want to get involved. And it's not like the buyers are stepping out of the way. I'm seeing some amounts of absorption and everything. It's just the sellers keep stepping. I kind of thought that maybe they're at the 20, that they had found a spot where they could maybe mess around a little bit and it could moderate, but it doesn't seem to be happening. I'm concerned that I've missed the most major part of the move, though, right? That's another reason why I'm not necessarily get involved. Anyways, so yeah, I think that in the near term that a lot of those kind of factors are inflationary. Like particularly millennials kind of coming into the fore of their spending. You have this point where boomers and millennials are both spending a lot. The boomers are going to stop spending soon. They're going to be retiring, and then they're going to realize they don't have enough money saved up for retirement. And I'm a little bit concerned about when the boomers retire, because most of the boomers did not save up enough. That's going to be a problem. Like, can the workforce support all these people retiring? Well, overnight lows is 15.5, right? No. Actually, Actually, I think we'd have to go all the way down to 14 before I would say it's like a breakout of lows. I don't know. The problem is just what's driving it. I can't. Well, the dollar is moving up. Oh wow, that flipped back really quickly. Okay, so that right there really sticks out to me. Why does that really stick out to me? Well, when we're having a strong move down, what we should tend to see is we'll start to see that, you know, that kind of square root law behavior start to come in, liquidity holes start to form, and price start to go sideways. And when that starts to form, there's this short period where price is extremely vulnerable to a reversal. So if somebody comes in with an opposing meta order, that opposing meta order could have stronger impact because the liquidity on the offers and the move behind it is going to be weak. So you can see there they came back to that 20 really easily. Now the 20 may just be like the resting spot. But I think that you have a chance now of like this whole thing retracing. I'm actually, let's try messing with it on sim. Okay. Not the way that I really want to do it, but this is kind of a dangerous trade, but that was a pretty strong pushback, right? That's enough that it coming, you know, the absorption there and then it bouncing back so quickly. That's a sign to me that that opposing meta order is possibly in play. Anyways, what I was talking about. All millennials spend too much money. Will they be able to support boomers? We'll see. But that's going to have some interesting impacts on inflation. And I think you're going to see some people be confused because you're going to see certain factors be inflationary and deflationary because you got to get down into the nuance of it. Less workers overall, I think, does tend to be disinflationary. But you're getting into this point at the moment where demand is like the highest it's ever going to be too. Oh no, of course. That's total nonsense. I'm going to be making a video about that strategy because I went and did some back testing of their silver bullet strategy and it doesn't work. Nope, it's marketing. Now, you know what it is people falling for the YouTube algorithms, right? Figure out how to manipulate the YouTube algorithm and then you can fool large segments of the population. And it's kind of crazy how easy it is. I guess the response to that would be, well, if it's so easy, then why don't you do it, Seth? Maybe I should be doing it. But it doesn't really seem too interesting to me. We could totally do it. We could get like, you know, would only take like 4 or 5 of us from chat, right? When we put the next video out, everybody goes and comments on the video. And then we can make like alt accounts to like argue with each other and stuff so that the video like goes viral and stuff. Totally, could totally do that. Okay, so I would think if it were that big of a failure, pulling 10K, well, I think you give retail traders too much credit. So the first thing is that you actually, if you go on Reddit, you are seeing a lot of people. You are seeing a lot of people struggling with it. So there are so many people that they're like, oh, I had a hard time understanding it. It's not working out for me. They think that if it's not working, it's because they don't understand the strategy well enough, which is kind of weird because like the setup that they all talk about is so incredibly well defined, right? And that's why I've singled it. Why I'm singling it out is, well, once you put yourself down on a specific setup, we can backtest that specific setup and see how it does, right? So I think that there's a lot of people that are failing with this strategy and like they're just blaming themselves, The other side of it is that I also think that these guys are taking on, excessive risk reward with it. So like they're taking pretty large stops relative to what they make and so forth. So I think it's something that's kind of well positioned to be able to fool a lot of people. But I cannot find a single shred of empirical evidence that suggests that it works. And the other thing is that there is a pretty wide, it's kind of like bifurcating the retail trading world. So like I would say, how much? Maybe I would say maybe 20 to 30% of the retail trading world at this time is favorable towards the strategy, and like everybody else absolutely hates it. Because like whenever it comes up in the day trading subreddits on Reddit, like people get uppity. Like people start arguing about it and stuff. So, but yeah, that's the next video we need to make. And hopefully I don't spend as much time on that one as what I'm working on right now. It's hard, man, when with the kids and stuff. The thing that stopped me through most of Q2 was working in the yard, but I think now my excuse is just that I've gotten so out of the routine and stuff that I haven't really. And I got other things going on. Your hero trade is, yeah, it is, right? I'd say looking okay. I mean, it's looking okay in that I caught the edge of it, so I should be able to get in here to where I should be able to scratch it. That's basically risk free. Well, there you go. That's okay. That's not too bad. I mean, anyways, it would have been a lot better if I had gotten 18.5, right? Like what I did was, it came down. I saw the push the opposite way, so I got in. But then I got in in the area of congestion. So I don't like that, just because if what's really going on here is meta order is done and it just kind of dies down, then they're probably going to settle here at this 112.20 area. That's why I was kind of like, I wasn't sure I was getting my fills on the limit. I was willing to hit into it and take a little bit of sequential profits and everything, because really I would like that break-even point to be below 17, right? I guess if I take one contract off, it will be. So we got 22 and 23 half are kind of like key positioning areas. That means that the market maker's difference between buyers and sellers is pretty tight. That doesn't really help us on the flip, but yeah, this is actually, I don't know. I mean, this will be a really great example for how to look for that reversal, right? So you get in a strong trend and then you get that pushback at the bottom of the trend, like especially if you don't know what's causing it, right? That tends to be a good reversal trade. Why? Because the liquidity behind it is disrupted. Yeah. So, this is where I really, the problem that I have with a lot of these kinds of setups that people talk about is really the story that people give, like what's going on behind the scene when that happens. Makes no sense. It's, when you have a real understanding of how the order book and liquidity and everything works, this whole story is kind of silly. Like, especially when they talk about like these quote unquote liquidity grabs, right? So if I know that there's liquidity at a certain spot, let's just say that there's a new low, there would be a liquidity grab, quote unquote, right? Okay, there's going to be buying down in there, okay? Why would I sell through it, right? So the story that they say is they want to bust through it, hit all the stops, and then reverse on the move and absorb down in here so that they can catch the reversal, right? Well, the problem with that is that you're going to have an impact on the market, right? So, if you buy it, it buys it back up, and then when you want to take your profits, it's going to take it to a new low. So that doesn't necessarily work, right? If I'm going to grab liquidity, it's probably because I'm a big guy that just needs to sell a lot that day, right? And I can push it to that area, and then, probably won't go much further than that, and that gives me the price that I need, right? So that doesn't give you like a reversal trade, right? That just that kind of tells you not to trade, really. Right? So that's kind of like where, just from starters, like the whole their whole kind of understanding of markets is just wrong, right? You know what I think happens is I think that we as retail traders will project onto the market makers. We'll project it thinking that the market makers and the informed traders are doing the same thing that we are, right? Like, because you're uninformed and you're making all of your decisions based off of some bizarre chart pattern, you think that the market makers and the informed traders, that's what they're doing, is they're making these decisions based on these patterns. And because a certain pattern has set itself up, they're going to do the X thing to make it do this. And that's how they're going to make their money. But the reality is that the majority of the institutional world does not function like that, right? The majority of the institutional world doesn't care at all what's going on with the chart, what the numbers are. Frankly, the largest swath of these guys don't even care what the fundamentals or the news or any of that stuff is, right? All they know is these are the distributions and withdrawals that I've gotten on my fund this month. These are the rules about what my positionings are, how I'm supposed to divide my fund up amongst different assets and redistributing their assets to maintain that distribution. That's all they care about. So they have these strict rules and they have to follow them. And those are the largest flows. They don't care about your new low or new high. They're just rebalancing the fund and trying to execute as optimally as possible, which really just means they try to reduce their impact on the book. Right? That's it. So all these patterns that everybody's always talking about are useless, right? If these guys have to sell tons of treasuries today, it's just going to keep going, right? And anybody that comes in here and tries to buy it on some sort of a liquidity grab sort of setup are just more orders for them to get filled on. You know? That's how I look at it. And now, here in this situation, why are they selling? I don't know. That's why I'm kind of a little... That's why I wasn't willing to take it live. Right? Good technical trade, though, I guess. Gustavo, have you attempted to develop or know of an indicator that is used to identify meta orders? Okay, so no, you can't really. Okay, so by the way, decent pushback does appear to be moderating a little bit. There. So here's your question is what is trading? Right? The word trading doesn't really mean a whole lot when it comes down to it. But trading is just buying and selling in the attempt to make money just from the buying and selling. That's really all trading means. So one could say that a large portion of trading activity really is gambling. People that have absolutely no clue what's going on, trades that have no real reason to work out, but the people believe in it and they're taking them anyways, right? There's plenty of people that out there that think that because they are wearing a special shirt or because it's that certain lucky time of the month based on their astrology signs and so forth, that they are more likely to win gambling in Vegas, right? But the reality is none of that stuff, it really has an effect, and net you lose gambling in Vegas, right? It's the same thing in financial markets. If you don't have an objective edge, which is to say, knowing something about the future flows that the rest of the market doesn't know, then you will on net lose money over a long time period. Like, that is just the way that it is. The way that the spread works and everything else, noise trading is net unprofitable in the long run. So you should only trade when you have an edge. And that's the other thing, is it would be nice if you always had an edge. But the market is just too competitive now, right? You should only trade when you really have that edge. So you could look at this trade and be like, oh, that's a really great trade. But I didn't take it on a live account. Why? Because I don't really know why these flows are coming in. I've identified a technical location where an opposing meta order is going to have stronger impact than usual. But I don't know why that opposing meta order came in. I don't know what the original downside meta order was. And ergo, I don't really have an edge in terms of knowing whether this is going to move lower or continue to bounce back up, right? So I don't take it live. But it's worth taking to practice managing the position, managing the multiple contracts, and watching the liquidity here, because you're going to get that liquidity doing the funky things, right? Wouldn't call it a good trade. Well, I'd say it's okay so far. It would have been great if I had taken all of the contracts off at 230, huh? Or 23. But I'm not 100% sure that I really have an edge here, so. Do you think a Bloomberg terminal is worth it? A Bloomberg terminal is absolutely worth it. Whether or not you personally will take advantage of it is a different thing altogether, right? Like, the Bloomberg terminal gives you so much data, and there is so much edge available in there. But I think if I had a Bloomberg terminal, I would probably be taking different trades. I think if I had a Bloomberg terminal, I would probably be trading stocks more often, for instance. But, it's a different kind of world. It's a different kind of world than the one that we do, right? Oh, that's the thing, is there's so much in finance. So we need to get more into the world of private equity and hedge fund strategies, because my plan is there's this whole world of investing that is not available to the average investor. Hedge funds and private equity and stuff are considered too risky, and you have to have a large amount of capital before they allow you to even play in that sandbox. And the government is changing it. They've made a change in the laws and so forth that instructs FINRA to make a test that when you pass that certification, you will then be able to invest in these products. And so what I want, that sounds like an opportunity to me. That sounds like not just an opportunity, but an opportunity that we are well suited for. So I want to make funds that specifically cater to that audience. Now, if we're going to do that, there's a lot of work that we got to do, right? There's a lot of things that we've got to learn between now and when that test comes out. I have all of the main pieces. I have like the certifications and so forth so that we can set the fund up and stuff, right? And I'm saving up hard. I actually think that I might be able to save up 100K, believe it or not. It'll be tough though. But I think I might, over a 2-year period, I think I might be able to pull together 100,000. And then we could start a fund like that. So there's lots of stuff for us to learn. If I had a Bloomberg terminal, there would be lots of stuff for me to learn to take advantage of it, right? Okay, so we're back to break even. I could choose to scalp it or double down. No, well, let's wait. Let's wait for a little bit. There hasn't been a whole lot of volume on it coming back. I would really want to see another push, another wave here for me to add on. We played with OpenBB. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Is that a bulletin board software? Oh, OpenBB is a leading open source investment research software platform. Well, I can go and look at it. There's been I've seen so many different things that claim to be like an open source Bloomberg terminal, and none of them come anywhere remotely close to being anything like a Bloomberg terminal. So I have to see what information it gives us access to. Look at the data. Look at the data that we get from it. What kind of ROI are we looking at? Well, so I think that we would have multiple funds. And I think that those funds would maybe have different goals, right? So when you're talking private equity, we're talking about like, if it really works out, you could make 10 times your money, right? So as a venture capital gets big and everything, and you're putting a lot of money into lots of little things, and then one of them kind of works out, but then in the end, you outperform the market. But like, you know, it's not like as crazy as, because there will be like one company where you made like 100,000 times your money, but you invest in so many different projects, right? But if we're doing private equity and we're relatively small funds to start out with, right? You have the opportunity to really multiply your money, right? Now, the hedge fund, maybe the same sort of a thing. Like, I think with a hedge fund, if we did things right, you could have some years in there where you're making 20-30% in the beginning. But, you know, market's pretty efficient. And I think that with some funds, and I think I'd like to have two. I'd like to have one that's more of a, well, I don't know. I think that I would have one that would be a momentum strategy and one that would be a discretionary strategy. But we can decide those things, right? But, you know, with a momentum strategy, the goal is not necessarily to outperform the market, but to have that kind of consistent performance and a far right tail, which means that it does okay. It does about on par with the market most of the time, but then when it works, it really, really works, like they did last year, right? So, anyways, oh man, I messed with the last night when I got to go to bed. It was like 74 degrees, and so I was like, so something's wrong here. So I like adjusted all the vents and basically closed all of the vents except for the ones upstairs and the one in the office. So a lot more air comes out, and the AC turned on, and I can just feel it like a wave over me of cold air that comes out. Okay, well, the moderation and push back up here a little bit is okay. I haven't seen like a real volume come into it long yet. Yeah. Anyways, as for this trade, I wouldn't say that it's a completely uninformed trade. I just don't think that I have enough knowledge to make it a live trade. That's why I'm using the sim. I think that it makes sense to do sim in situations like that to kind of keep your skills up, you know, when it seems a little iffy. And in this case, especially it being a Monday, that the Monday in particular makes me feel like it's really iffy, right? Because I wouldn't expect it to be moving like that unless there was like some real news, and I don't have any such news that I know of. There must maybe be a headline I missed. Did I miss? Oh, well, there was the New York Fed manufacturing 1.1 versus negative 3.5. Market was moving before that, though. They kind of stopped and then they moved lower on this move. I see. So that second leg of it could be the New York Fed manufacturing number. How did I miss that? I suppose the initial move, too, could be on the same thing. What else? Oh, we have a bill auction today. 6-month bill auction. Okay. Luxury group Richemont, the owner of Cartier and Van Cleef in Apparel's jewelry at Arpels. I don't know how you say this. That looks French to me, though. reported a surprise drop in revenue from the Americas in the 3 months through June, faltering demand in one of its biggest markets as an ominous sign of a weakening consumer. Although it seems like that the high end is getting hit more than the general population. Okay, so they pushed up a little bit there. It's fallen back a little bit. Still not seeing very strong changes in cumulative delta accompanying those moves. You're so worried about the dollar sell-off continuing? Well, if the dollar continues to sell off, it would probably be good for most markets. I think that a major component behind the rise that we've seen in equities over the past 2 or 3 weeks has been the dollar, especially going into last week, right? Saw the dollar selling off, equities are doing well. And the general correlation that you tend to see between the dollar and equities is that the dollar goes up when equities are having a hard time as a flight to safety, and the dollar goes down when equities are doing well. And it could be more the opposite, that when the dollar goes down, the equities go up because those equities are now worth more from that devalued dollar. So a weaker dollar could be good for a lot of markets, right? It's really been, you got to remember that for most of the past, I'd say 30 years, the dollar index has been below 100, right? So now a weaker dollar wouldn't be such a bad thing. Of course, there's a point at which the dollar goes down so much that you have to say, oh, something else is going on here and this is really bad, right? But that's a long ways off. That's like maybe dollar index in the 80s. Nah, I think the bigger conundrum in markets still is, what are interest rates going to do from here? Right? Will the Federal Reserve have to continue raising rates? Okay, well, I'm getting enough of a thing in this area that I'm going to try playing the range here. Let's see here. I was still reading that story. The slowdown in luxury demand in the U.S., which saw 4% decline, overshadowed optimism. Okay. Keep that open BB thing open so that I will make sure to read it later. New York Fed manufacturing survey beat expectations in July, but fell to barely positive from the 6.6% print in June. Overall sentiment index has swung wildly in recent months from optimisms to pessimism at back, and that is highlighted by the manufacturers' diverging views of business conditions, with roughly 29% reporting an improvement and 27% citing deterioration. Really? Perhaps most notably, the report showed a further cooling of inflationary pressures. Good morning, Monday morning, great experiences. What, wait, are we having a great experience today? I don't know. The outlook for prices received pickup even as the overall outlook for business declined. So I think that it was the manufacturing survey that kind of pushed the markets down. I don't know about that pushback though. Maybe that was just some profit taking and they're done. Well, I guess we'll find out here in a second if they decide to go to new lows. Because it's summer Monday and I'm tan. Do I look more tan? So over the weekend, I helped my brother move. So I maybe got a little bit of sun from that. I was having an issue. You know what? Something that's weird that happens to me is I'll get like salt on my eyebrow. Like some of the sweat glands will get overactive and it'll dry and it will literally be like salt on my eyebrow. And if I've been sunburned, then that salt stings. And so yesterday I was getting that where it kind of stung. So I think that maybe means that I got too much sun while I was helping them move. Despite my best efforts to stay in the shade. What's this? Evacuation underway after train is derailed, this time causing a level 2 hazmat situation near White Marsh Township, Pennsylvania. Okay. Somebody was saying something about Mike Pence, and I'm like, I don't know what that has to do with anything. I think the point Jack Procebiak is trying to make here is that they think that most of the Republican politicians don't care about the American public. Okay, by the way, we're getting a strong move up in the dollar here. It's kind of getting a little fidgety though. So on the politics side, there was this conference of sorts, and in the conference, Tucker Carlson got the opportunity to interview multiple candidates. I think that Tucker Carlson probably just ended Governor Hutchinson's career. But then Mike Pence didn't do very well either. And so the whole thing is that they say Mike Pence is more concerned about the Ukraine war than he is about people in the United States. See, the Republicans, I think you got a real problem. Well, I'm a Republican, so I should say I think we've got a real problem because there's a portion of the party that is very, very unhappy about the Ukraine war. They just don't think that we should be giving support to Ukraine at all. This is kind of this isolationist wing of the party that's kind of cropped up and was really driven by Trump. Trump really gave them a voice, right? And so now in the Ukraine thing, they're pushing for us to just like completely pull out, not give any aid to Ukraine whatsoever, et cetera, right? And so it's kind of a hard game to play for you to say, well, but we do need to be involved in Ukraine, because then you're pushing against your base and they're going to put you in this tight position where they say, why do you care more about Ukraine than you do about the people in the United States? Because, I mean, look, it's a lot of money. It's a ton of money that we're taking on to do the Ukraine war. Yeah, it does kind of hurt the regular American citizen, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't be doing it, though. And the issue, politically at least, is that the majority of Americans support Ukraine aid. So it's kind of like, in order for you to win the Republican primary, you have to make yourself toxic to the general populace. Right? Most of them are Democrats. Well, I don't consider being hawkish or dovish an explicitly Republican or Democratic kind of opinion, right? So that's the first issue that I have is it kind of bothers me that the approach towards foreign policy is kind of becoming a limitist test. I don't think that bodes well for the ability of your party to become a big tent, right? Because the advantage that the Republicans have right now, the weird thing that happened was that during the Obama years, the Democrat Party became the party of the establishment, right? They became the party with all of the money and stuff. It's so funny because people don't there's so many people, like commenters online and stuff, that don't realize this shift has happened. But all of those tech people in Silicon Valley, all of these guys they're Democrats, guys. And the amount of money in the Democrat Party is insane. So see, the push in the Democrats has always been like, Republicans, they're the country club. They're the country club party and they have all the money and that's the only reason that they're relevant. That's not the case anymore, right? The Democrat Party started to become the country club party, right? And so everybody else was like, okay, I guess we'll go over to the Republican Party. And so now the Republican Party is becoming the working man's party, right? Right? But then you have some of these libertarian and ultra conservative elements within the Republican Party that want to create limitless tests on things like Ukraine. If we left Ukraine alone, they wouldn't be in this mess. I'm not sure I agree with that. So, okay, well, how should we do this? Let's finish the other thought first. So the other thought first is just to reiterate that Ukraine aid is popular among the American public, and it is probably not a winning move. So as an example, if DeSantis, I think one of the things that killed DeSantis, like he's not picking up the momentum and things like that. I think one of the things that's killing DeSantis is that he did not differentiate himself from Donald Trump on the Ukraine war. I think that he should have said, we need to have a very high level of oversight over the aid that's going to Ukraine, but they do still need our support, is probably what he should have said. And because he didn't do that, all of the kind of establishment people that really don't like Donald Trump, and by the way, totally support the Ukraine war, were not really enthusiastic about DeSantis. And so I think that hurt. I think that position hurt DeSantis. Okay. But, okay, to the question, if we left Ukraine alone, they wouldn't be in this mess. So the assertion is that it was the United States push to become friendly with Ukraine and to potentially bring Ukraine into NATO that is driving the Russians' desire to invade Ukraine. I think that's absolute nonsense. The reality is that Russia has had an aggressively... Oh, here's my stop. The reality is that Russia has had this insane nationalist agenda going ever since Putin has been in power, that is basically everything for Russia at the expense of everybody else. And if they can't have a quasi vessel state in Ukraine, they're going to take it over, sort of a thing, right? I believe that the people of Ukraine have the right to make their own decisions, and that they have the right to make their own decisions to align themselves with the West or to align themselves with Russia. Right? Russia was going to do the things that it's doing. In other words, Russia was going to try and expand its influence beyond these certain borders, no matter what. And ergo, I disagree with the sentiment, right? Like, if we were not involved, Ukraine would still be getting oppressed by Russia. It's just that Ukraine wouldn't have any chance to fight back. Yeah, there's something happened here. Like, I'm not hearing anything on my news squad. Let me make sure that's on. I'm seeing USD CHF seeks stability above 86.86 as USD index refreshes days high. and the dollar is just taking off here. So it seems like there's some sort of an unexpected currency move that's going on here that may be related to what we're doing in China. I'm sure if Canada and Mexico were to have NATO arms at our border, I'm positive we would say, hey. Well, so we might do something about them putting weapons and pointing them at us, yes, but we would not invade Canada. That the CIA might. I mean, remember the whole thing was that the CIA and FBI wanted to invade Cuba and blame it on the president many times and all of this sort of stuff, right? There's definitely elements within the United States, okay, but it wouldn't be illegal, like. But that's the thing is that Ukraine wasn't like that. I mean, they were aligning themselves with the West, yes, but they hadn't done anything that would justify Russia invading them. No, I wouldn't invade Cuba. I wouldn't invade Canada. Listen, like this is the thing is that they all say like, oh, you know, if Canada had been taken over by some sort of communist dictator, the United States would be concerned about it and invade Canada just like Russia is doing right now. No, because we have a communist dictator in Canada and we didn't invade, okay? You got to stick that Trudeau joke in there every time you can. Anytime you can, because pretty messed up stuff going on in Canada. Ukraine was oppressing the portion of its own population that favored Russia. I'm not sure I agree with that either, but I don't think that would be something that I would know enough about to comment on. I have a program question. Can you copy and paste a TradingView program and use it? No. But if you understand TradingView and you understand NinjaTrader, converting it between the two isn't too hard. We, as a reserve currency, need to have a better diplomacy. Get all sides to negotiate for peace and prosperity. So here's the thing. Okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Donald Trump died from COVID when he got sick. Remember when he got sick? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Donald Trump died of COVID. Okay, and Mike Pence became president. And then Mike Pence somehow, you know, just casually went on to victory. Okay, so Mike Pence was president. Okay, because here's the thing, Mike Pence the reason why I say Pence is because Mike Pence of all of the Republican nominees is probably the most hawkish. Right. So if it's the hawkishness that's pushing, that's if it's just the United States and NATO being hawkish against Russia, and that's why they're doing it. OK, this would be a good witness test. Right. I don't think that they would have invaded. I think that Putin has been specifically waiting for Democrat presidents to do all of this stuff. Right. When Obama was president, didn't think that Obama would do anything. So he pushed in and he took in all of these places. And then it was the same thing with Joe Biden, because like honestly, if certain Republicans, I don't know if Donald Trump would, but you know, there are certain Republicans that if they were in charge, they would have U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine, right? Well, I mean, we kind of have U.S. troops kind of there, like, but I'm saying that we would be getting like casual, you know, large numbers of units. We would be very much involved. There are certain ones that would, right? That's bullshit. Okay, so now you're pushing things that I think are just like objective falsehoods that are spread by the Russians. Okay, like if you go and you say, or you bring in like paramilitary organization, you literally invade a country, take over certain areas, and then say, let's have a vote to whether or not you're a part of Russia now. Yeah, you think that anybody that doesn't want to be a part of Russia is going to go out and vote for it? Come on, man. Come on. There's no vote like that could even remotely be considered legitimate. Okay? Maybe there are some areas that are Russian enough and want to be with Russia enough that it's not worth Ukraine trying to hold on to them. But you know, I think a lot of that comes down to, listen, if you have to have like a legitimate vote. It was not like a vote done under circumstances where you can say that that's what they wanted. There's no way that you could know, because the vote was done under duress. And by the way, that even comes down into, do you believe that voting to become to cede from a nation is actually means that you should be able to cede? Because I don't necessarily agree with that either. Like, I don't think that if California all voted and said we're going to be our own country and not a part of the United States, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that they're allowed to break off, right? I mean, was kind of the whole thing about the Civil War. And it kind of depends on who the president is and what they decide to do and everything, but there's other factors involved there, right? Well, so you want to tell other people they're victims of propaganda? Well, it's so straight up there is. Yeah. Okay, listen. The Russians have specifically targeted Republican social media channels and pushed Russian propaganda, and there are some things that they have pushed on there that are just either objectively false or just based on complete nonsense logical fallacies. And the one that these places wanted to succeed is one of them. Okay? It's a complicated situation. If there's something that I said that was like factually incorrect, then let's argue over the thing that I said that was factually incorrect. Okay, but the idea that what Russia is doing over there is somehow justified and that those places wanted to see, it's total nonsense. That's not how it works, first of all. Okay, and those were not legitimate votes. There's no way to know. So I know that's the unpopular thing, but you don't just get to vote on it, unfortunately. That's not how world power works, right? No, listen. You can't go and invade an area. Like, using the logic that you're trying to use right now, Uzi, is basically like, I could use that same logic to say that it was totally okay for Germany to invade Austria and Poland and all of these other places. Because every time that they went and they did that, they would have a vote afterwards and they would say, okay, do you want to be a part of Germany? And they'd be like, yes. Well, okay, were they legitimate votes? No, they weren't. Were they like recognized? No, they weren't. It's ridiculous to say that, like, in a situation like that you could even have a legitimate vote that would be a accurate reflection of what the people wanted, because at that point they're already under duress, right? Are we flattening? We are. This more recent move that we believe is being driven by dollar and possibly by the intervention from China, we did flatten a little bit. Well, so to go to 383, we got back to 3.8 on that pullback, right? But let's see here. It started turning around. No, I think so. You know, we came to 20, right? We came back up. We started coming back down. Well, it was more like 18. We came back and we are kind of going sideways at 20. And then it started to fall over. So I think that if it wasn't for this, we probably would still, maybe that trade would be going well. So first thing is on that first trade, even though I don't think that it was a super informed trade, and that's why we took it on sim. I still think that first trade was okay, and like something else came along and short-circuited the trade, right? And I wasn't very fast on that, but I took the loss, and it was an acceptable loss. It's okay. Now going forward, what do we get? Well, the question here is, if it's a currency intervention, how much intervention do they need, and is what they've done enough? I'm not too sure. There does seem to be it seems like the treasuries want to revert more than they normally would, probably because, again, it is being driven by China. Yeah. Oh, I didn't see. OZ said you have no empirical evidence that their vote wasn't legitimate. Well, that's the whole point, is that in a situation like that, you can't have the information to say that it was a legitimate vote, right? But it's entirely possible that, yeah, the majority of those people would prefer to live in Russia, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then this is the other thing, is if you have a bunch of people from Mexico and they move and they settle along the Texas border, is it then okay for Texas to come into the United States and say, well, these people, they would rather be a part of Mexico, and then start annexing parts of Texas? No. That's not how it works. Even if the people voted to do it, that's not how it works. China is slowing. India's latest import-export data showed slowing. It's sort of weird that India refines oil products exporting. Well, it's the whole thing that, like, China's currency is going down, and at the same time imports are going down quite dramatically, is really weird, right? Does Jigsaw have micros? Yes, but the micros is not a feature of the trading platform. It's a feature of the broker and data platform that you choose. But any broker that has the CME will give you access to the micro products. Okay, so back to 16. My position was from 19, so I'd still be under. In fact, it actually went quite a bit lower than when I puked, so if we were back to like 20, then I would maybe be thinking about doing something, but at the same time, trend is down. We probably should be looking for a sell, right? Anyways, I kind of got distracted by arguing about the Ukraine thing overall, without bringing in, getting back to the political side of it, right? Which is that the Ukraine war issue is a serious problem for the Republican Party, because I think a lot of people are fed up with the Democrats right now. But if it became if the Ukraine war became like the issue for the American public, the president, for 2024, Republicans probably lose that. Your chats won't go through. Maybe I need to change it to like live chat. And change that. I'll try a live chat over here and see if that changes things. That your last one went through. Maybe you're using words that are naughty. I said it may not be how it works in your mind, but it's still their problem, not ours. well, okay, but now you're coming. So I'm the thing I just wanted to push back on is the idea that like Russia is either being legitimate or acting rationally. That's not the case. That's just an excuse, right? They would, even if we did everything that Republicans say they should be doing, right? Russia would still be acting this way, right? Because it's a part of their ideology, frankly. Okay. So then the next, war is rarely rational. So the next point is a more legitimate point, which is it really our problem? Well, so what are the possible positives and negatives to the United States from this? Is it enough? Is Russia taking over Ukraine enough of a security threat to the United States to warrant putting money into it? Hey, this is where it really starts to get ugly, right? So the reason that the United States enjoys the power and influence that it does around the world is because of the relationships that it has, right? If people no longer have confidence in those relationships, then that really kills one of the United States' major advantages. And that advantage of geopolitical power does give us an advantage economically. Okay. So if somebody like Putin comes in and, you have a country starts to get close to the United States, and then Putin comes in and takes over that country, and the United States doesn't do anything about it, what do you think all of the other countries that are possibly in a situation like that are going to think? Like in all seriousness, what are nations already thinking, right? Because we left Afghanistan, right? We're divesting ourselves of Taiwan. That one's starting to get a little bit scary to me. That one is kind of like, I don't know if the US will come to Taiwan's aid or not, but we're giving ourselves the optionality of it, aren't we? We're divesting ourselves. We're building this stuff over in the United States so that if Taiwan gets taken over, it's not a big deal. So if you're any country, you've got to be thinking about, okay, how much is my friendship with the Americans actually worth now? Because it seems like they're not really following through. Well, if they had allowed Russia to just completely walk over Ukraine, like Joe Biden had said, okay, well, it happened, but we're not going to give them any arms or anything like that, right? We warn them, we'll help them, but we're not going to give them arms. Okay, that would be it. That would just decimate the American geopolitical standing in the world. Okay, so this is where you kind of have to follow incentives and things like that. Yes, I think that there's a pretty strong political and economic incentive for the United States to support Ukraine. We say it's none of our business. Well, kind of because of the situation and the way that we've positioned ourselves and everything, it is kind of our problem. Yeah, is that why Buffett sold off his TSMC holdings? I'm not sure. When it happened, it really didn't seem like that was why he did it. I'm still a little bit like, But you know what? I think that it's probably more than that. Like with TSMC right now, okay. Yeah, I think that the chances of China invading Taiwan are much lower than people think. Okay, you're talking about a fluid thing, right? We're getting new information on this all the time, so I'm sure I would probably shift on this in the future. But given the information that I have right now, yeah, China would set off a massive fallout if Taiwan gets invaded. The other Asian countries would pull back on manufacturing or trading with China. I think that it would be very harmful to China. So I understand why from a political side they would want to invade, but it's kind of one of those things where, like, as a politician, you're always going to talk about it and want to do it, but then nobody ever actually pulls the trigger because the consequences would be too dire. They'll just stroll in and take it like they did Hong Kong. Well, now that is maybe possible because the pro-China party in Taiwan is doing better, isn't it? But like a land invasion, no. Like a military invasion, I don't think that's going to happen. It's kind of one of those things. It's just like with the earlier Russian actions, right? It was like, well, if Russia just rolls in with tanks into another country, then maybe people would get involved. But when it's not really Russia, it's just like some mercenary army that says that they're acting independently and everything, and they have the plausible deniability sort of a thing, then everybody kind of was like, it's not enough to get the public upset about it enough to push their politicians to go to war, right? And so you're right. If China wants to, quote, take over Taiwan, they kind of have to do it with soft power. But I don't think that that Taiwan is going to let themselves get taken over like Hong Kong did. They might move towards closer relationship with Taiwan, but I think that the instant that China would started to try and push something to like annex them, that the people would repel from it. Okay, Ukraine is a dictatorship as Zelensky has banned all other political parties. Well, so my understanding is that is true. I don't think that necessarily makes you a dictator. When your country is being invaded, people resort to crazy things to be able to do, you do what you got to do to be effective. I don't know if that means that you're a dictator. I mean, there's a big difference between like taking sort of martial law kind of actions compared to what it's like in many of the countries that we would consider a dictatorship, where there's no active conflict and the leader is, completely locked down on everything, right? The funny thing about this was that I was kind of starting to think that maybe the Ukraine war was no longer going to have an economic impact and that the impact was just going to be purely political. And then this morning, the whole wheat grain deal fell through, right? So it kind of is a problem. I don't know if I accept your definition. Dictatorship definition. A country governed by a dictator. A ruler with total power over a country, typically one who has obtained control by force. I don't think that's Zelensky. Okay, let's just say that Ukraine won. They pushed the Russian invaders out. They sign a peace deal with Russia. Everything's hunky-dory. And then Zelensky refuses to allow elections or something like that. Then you're definitely a dictator then, right? Okay, so the Nazi problem is a weird thing, right? I think that one gets exaggerated. Okay. Is Ukraine a corrupt place? Is there a lot of corruption in Ukraine? Probably. But what do you do when that's the way that things were to begin with? Does that mean that it's okay for Russia to invade? No. Does not. I'm sorry, but Mexico is an incredibly there's a lot of corruption in Mexico. We don't just invade Mexico. Come on. It is a question of whether or not. Oh, so what's the question then? What is the point of bringing that up? Many governors acted like dictators during COVID. Sure did. Yeah. Okay, the question is whether or not Ukraine is worth our time and money. Okay, so how corrupt Ukraine is factor into whether or not it's worth our time and money? Right? This is it's an unsavory discussion, isn't it? Because when it comes down to power, right? Sometimes the thing that is best for your power, and frankly for you economically as a country, is not necessarily what is the word that I'm looking for? You know, it's a little unsettling, right? It's not necessarily what we would think of as in like a perfect world, right? So the reality is in a multifaceted world with differing ideologies and powers, the United States does from time to time ally itself with unsavory characters that are corrupt and or not good. And that's happened time and, you know, like the reality is like, you know, if the United States sees there's like a coup going on in a South American country, right? And like they can see that it's going to happen, then they go and they start giving those people that are pushing the coup the money and so forth, purely so that they have the relationship with those people, right? Should we be doing that? Well, I think one could totally make a moral argument about whether or not you should. But the reality is that like in terms of like, does it improve the United States' security and power? You know, there's a good argument to be made. And I think that that's the reason why we've always done those sorts of things. Right? Is that because we're giving billions of dollars in weaponry to a country that's citing it? Well, I don't think that the money is being spent very judiciously. Sure, but okay. The alternative is don't give them any aid, right? And let Russia take over. And I'm saying I think that the damage that it does to you geopolitically and thus the economic damage that you get from that, I don't think that you should just let them waltz in. Right? Your case for intervention is no, it's not as weak as piss. You're talking. Just take a step back for a second. You're saying we should give up the greatest geopolitical advantage that we have, and there's not going to be there's not going to be consequences from that. I'm saying that the debt that you incur on that from Ukraine is not as bad as the problems that you get when you destroy the American prominence in the geopolitical sphere. Absolutely. I mean, it's already kind of a problem. If we had just abandoned Ukraine, then it would be like all done, right? You're already having kind of a problem. Like it's kind of starting to become a thing. Like, do you really want to ally yourself with America? Do you really? Because it's kind of not helping. It's kind of a dangerous thing, right? We're not going to defeat. Well, I think that you already kind of have. So here's one of the things that I hear that also kind of bothers me about this Ukraine thing is when we talk about Ukraine is losing the war is what they say, right? Well, define losing and winning, right? I think the reality is Russia pushed and took certain areas, and they have now built defensive positions. Okay, it's a lot easier to hold the defensive position than it is to attack. Ukraine is taking the offensive right now, although they have not committed their main force. They're just kind of prodding around, right, to find weaknesses, and they have not committed their reserves. Okay, it may well be the case that Ukraine is not able to make any more significant progress. That's a real possibility, and in fact, it's starting to look like that is the most realistic possibility, right? So then what happens? Well, those lines just kind of stay there, and maybe you go to a situation where like the war is continued, but like everybody forgets about it because the front's not changing or anything, and it just kind of becomes solidified. I mean, that happens a lot, right? You really think Russia couldn't have? I really believe that Russia could not have leveled Kiev by now. They would have done it if they could. The reality is that they made a push to try and take over Kiev, and it failed. Right? So, yeah, well, the dollar came back down really hard. So now, the interesting thing is that this whole move really pushed the treasuries. Now the dollar comes all the way back. The treasuries didn't really recover. They didn't come back to 20 at least. Oh, okay. Explain to me, if they didn't really want to, why they committed 3 whole columns all driving towards Kiev and like tens of thousands of people towards trying to do so before eventually pulling out and changing their objectives. Did y'all forget about that first 6 months? Come on. They 100% came in with the objective to take over the whole country and failed. That's straight up what happened. Pulling back isn't failing. It is in the goal of a regime change in Ukraine. Russia failed. Yes. Objectively, in every sense of the word, their initial objective was regime change in Ukraine, and they failed. So then they scaled it back, and they said, well, now our objective is just to take over these certain Russian areas, right? Well, they hold some Russian areas. They hold some of those areas. Ukraine's pushing back. Will Ukraine really be able to make progress on that? I don't know. Okay, so then where are you at? Who won and who lost? Well, it's not such a simple thing, but I think that Russia expended far more. I think that what Russia lost wasn't worth it for them, right? They would be better off if they hadn't have gone in. I think that, this is one of those things where everybody kind of loses in war, but I think that Russia lost more than everybody else, right? I don't know if that's true, Uzi, because lives are worth a lot, man. They have like just absolutely decimated. Russia was already facing some pretty wild demographic problems, and then they just fed their youth into this meat grinder. It's really like I said, you got to remember that Russia is driven by a hyper nationalist ideology, pro Russian ideology that really drives some crazy thinking, right? Oh, lots of people have died in Ukraine too, but this is not worth it for Russia. So now you're kind of shifting the argument, right? Because if it's NATO versus Russia, then yeah, I think that NATO comes out on top there. I think that Russia has substantially weakened itself in the world. And that's to NATO's advantage. Yeah, Ukrainians lose in doing that, but they're the ones whose country is being invaded. What do you know? So what's your choice? Just let yourself get invaded? Okay. And I mean, that's the ultimate problem here, is that the thing that's being proposed has very dire negative consequences for the world. Especially since we can't like go back. So like here's the other thing, okay? Is it's already happened. The Ukrainians have already repelled the Russian from invading Kiev, at least. There's an ongoing battle going on here now and everything, right? And then we're gonna come in and just cut off all aid all of a sudden? Like, come on. Okay, so first of all, understand that if that's what you did, probably Russia would take over Kiev at that point, right? Russia would just completely take over Ukraine, right? If there's something I've said that's inaccurate, then point it out. But I have no time for you saying blah, this yap. Let's keep it to real points. So you let Russia just take over Ukraine then at that point, after you had already given them so much support? Can you imagine? Do you realize how utterly devastating that would be to the world order, right? At that point, the whole setup that has basically driven world geopolitics since World War II would just be completely gone, and it would be a free-for-all. One way or another, NATO will abandon Ukraine? I don't think that they're just going to completely stop aid. Right. What I do see happening is that NATO is kind of saying, well, okay, so like Zelensky says we need more stuff. Like, we're not getting enough to be able to accomplish our objectives, right? And NATO is kind of saying, well, you need to chill out. Like, that's what happened at that, what was it, G7? It wasn't a G7 conference, but there was a conference, right? And Zelensky did not look too good at that conference. That is going. That doesn't mean that they're going to leave NATO high, that they're going to leave Ukraine high and dry. But yeah, I don't know if there's enough support to give Ukraine to be able to completely drive the Russians out of the country and recover all of the lost territory. That's true. But they're not just going to completely abandon Ukraine, right? And the instant, if Russia turned around and started pushing again and starting to make significant territorial gains, I think the situation would change very quickly again, right? But you can't have a presidential candidate come in and then unilaterally decide to no longer give Ukraine aid, which is to say, I'm concerned that might happen, or rather that that's what some Republicans want to do, and it would be a very, very bad thing for the world. And it's something that I think that the majority of Americans understand why that is bad and would not let happen. Ergo, it is a bad position for the party to have, right? Which is where we all kind of started this, right? Why keep putting it off? Listen, we supported the Afghanistan fighting against Russia there for like 20 years. This has only been 2 years, right? This can go on forever. Or as long as Putin wants, I'm sure that if Putin died, maybe things would shift, but there's now that Russia has like defensive embarkments and everything, it would be pretty hard to drive him out. Yeah. Not without significantly more commitment that I'm not sure the West has the stomach for. But that's very different from cutting Ukraine off from aid, right? It's more Europe and England who's at risk if things get out of order? Well, like I said, I think the primary thing at stake here is the United States' preeminent position as, geopolitical power. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, the reality is that position was weakening. We had already kind of made some missteps there. If we had allowed Russia to invade Ukraine without doing anything, then it really would have been over, right? That would have been a license for every other country out there to start doing the stuff that they've been wanting to do for 50 years, right? Ukraine will be Afghanistan. Yeah, well, yeah. I think one of the things that's kind of funny about this was that the Ukrainians were more successful than I think Joe Biden anticipated, right? They thought that they were going to, push against the Russians, but then eventually the Russians would win. And then the United States would be funding an ongoing insurgent campaign against Russia, just like they had with Afghanistan. And that's something that you get better bang for your buck, and would weigh down Russia for decades, right? And then the Ukrainians completely repelled the Russians, right? So their success was kind of to the West's detriment, because then that meant that the West was on the hook for even more support. Now, the hope is, I think that here's what I think will happen, okay? What I think will happen is Ukraine will continue to kind of prod around, but ultimately not have too much success with their counteroffensive. You never know. There could be a breakthrough, but right now it looks like that the counteroffensive is not going to really change things too much, right? So at that point, I think that the West is going to kind of what is the word? Hedge a little bit and start pushing Zelensky towards making some sort of a treaty. And I think that treaty will probably involve, like, we keep things to current borders and Ukraine gets explicit security guarantees so that if Russia ever invades the other territory again, the West is obligated to get militarily involved as well. Right? Okay. At that point, I think you can call it a success for the West. If that's the way that goes. We made a crucial error when we helped the Afghans expel the Russians. We shouldn't have stayed and helped them with GDP, but respected their traditions. We made a bad choice. Well, the United States hasn't been too good at the country building aspect of things, have they? So the thing is that if you get that peace treaty in Ukraine, right, then the West can turn its attention towards rebuilding Ukraine. And I think that will be amazing. I think that the opportunities and the economic opportunities that will come in when we have the chance to rebuild Ukraine will be an amazing story. Similar to the rebuilding of Europe after World War II, right? I think in the end, it will be a win for the West if that's how it goes down, right? But if it turns into the conflict doesn't end, the West just completely abandons Ukraine, and then Russia sweeps over, then it would be terrible for the United States and the West's geopolitical position. It would only strengthen ties between Russia, China, Iran, and upset the world order in terrible, terrible ways. But for now, the biggest impact that we see both politically and economically here is how this affects the Republican primary. That the Ukraine war issue ends up being a huge roadblock towards Republicans taking the presidency, let's say. Who knows? So DeSantis has been like redoing his campaign. I'm looking at this and I'm kind of like, because the DeSantis campaign has done a couple of like pretty decent things organization wise and everything, but it looks like that there was some serious mismanagement from the top, because what's happening right now in the DeSantis campaign is they are firing staffers. They're doing cost cutting. So they're saying, we haven't taken fire as much as we thought. Our burn rate is too high. We need to scale back. Right? Well, yeah, because nothing happens before Labor Day. So that was kind of a big miscalculation on their part. Or maybe it was a bet, I guess you could say, that they were somehow different. Right? That's kind of a problem. The burn rate is too high, and they didn't get anything from it. DeSantis declined in popularity during that period. And again, if DeSantis changed his position and said, well, I don't think that we should abandon Ukraine, but I'm very concerned about how our money is being spent, right? I think that that's a position that you could probably thread the needle with, and then DeSantis would be able to get that support from those groups that I think he's lacking right now. Because right now, the Hawks are not going to support DeSantis. Right? The Hawks want somebody to compete against Donald Trump. And it's basically, since it's not DeSantis, they have to go with one of the lower tier candidates, and they all kind of suck. Right? We know how to I don't know if we know how to just walk away. The whole nation building thing in the I don't think that the United States has figured it out. I think that there are some fundamental things to our approach and the way that our organizational structures work and everything like that that have made it difficult for us to do that nation building. But the culture in Ukraine is Western enough that I think that those particular things wouldn't be a problem. So rebuild means no. Ukraine would own Ukraine and its resources, and they should go back to the regular order of things, which would mean eventually that Zelensky retires and you get a different president. That's probably the most likely outcome. Well, after that kind of, so we had that big flush lower that I puked on. It's kind of been slowly coming back up, but I don't know. The activity doesn't seem to be there, at least not in the 10-year. It's still selling in the 5. How to destroy a market maker? Well, I don't know if you can really do, the market maker's advantage is that they have so much money but when they tend to get hammered is when you get those explosions in volatility, right? I think kind of the unfortunate thing is that we have a better chance of, and I'm not going to say destroy, but taking edge from the informed traders than we do the market makers right now. Maybe I think that for things to change with the market maker, that there would need to be actual changes to the structure of the market, right? But the way that these funds move and everything has become so much about the funds, and I don't think that the market has really, it's not a there's still a lot of people when they're saying I'm going to buy stocks and so forth, right? That they're trying to do your typical fundamental analysis and things like that, and they don't consider these sorts of things that, like, the index basically rules everything now, and you can potentially front run the index. But once enough money has figured that out, I mean, there are definitely people out there in the hedge fund world making money off of that, but once enough money has figured that out, I think those funds are going to have a hard time. Because essentially the execution costs for the fund is going to increase. But that would then result in a diversification in the market again, and that it would ultimately be a good thing, right? But the market makers, probably there would need to change rules. Something to equalize things out so that these big guys with all the money aren't completely in control of everything. Like maybe giving retail traders an advantageous spot in the queue. That way, at the very least, they can still make, the tick from it going back and forth. Okay, lame. I don't think that's gonna happen. Doesn't seem like a venture worth putting capital behind. Let me put it that way. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Bloomberg, seeing reduced Wall Street analyst coverage or losing it altogether can have severe consequences for companies. Just ask the Tisch family Lowe's. Yep. So when I had Sumo Logic, right, when certain analysts stopped covering them is when things went south for the stock, which I thought was really, it really bothered me because it was so short-sighted. It was like 1 quarter they didn't quite have the growth that they wanted, and that was because of COVID in 2021, and then everybody gave up on the stock, even though I thought they had a good thing going on. Oh boy, Futures Trader is having a poll about, do you think there will be a recession by the end of the year or soft landing and steady? I don't think that it will be soft landing, but I'm not sure that it's recession either. I think that the recession might come later. I think that what will happen is we'll just continue to hover and waver above the ground, right? I'll vote recession. 41% say soft landing after 39 votes. Tesla, Netflix, and Goldman Sachs are among companies reporting earnings this week. Yeah, Goldman's tomorrow, right? Yeah, their earnings are going to be interesting, right? Because the bad news was last earnings, so I would assume that this time around there would be, them getting everything under control and everything, but I think the reality is there's still some fallout from their blunders, right? With the whole Apple credit card and all that. No, I don't. I think that there's some legitimate concerns. So, JP Morgan earnings were on Friday, right? And they were okay. But like the banks overall have been kind of selling off. Goldman has been in a tough spot because their foray into consumer lending has not gone very well for them. I think there's a lot of reason to be concerned about Goldman's earnings. I mean, maybe they'll be great, but I think that the things that I've seen so far they've already been kind of preparing people that they're not going to be very good. So that overall wouldn't be like a bad thing for the stock. But then bank stocks have been struggling overall relative to the market, so. Have you ever thought about building an algo to use arbitrage and positive EV to bet with online bookkeepers? Oh, yeah. So I've definitely thought about that. And the issue that I always come into is that there's just not a venue that I have confidence in. Like I'm really interested in political markets like that, and predictit.org is really kind of fizzled out. I'm sure that at some point it will happen, but I don't know. Maybe the problem is that by the time a good enough exchange exists for that, somebody will have already come in and taken the edge out of it. Maybe. Well, I wouldn't say that. Because your AMP futures account is probably still going to zero. The Goldman Sachs is just maybe 5, a few percentage points down relative to the market. Anyways, yeah, I think that my attention overall is shifting much more towards higher time frame sort of things. So hedge fund portfolio style strategies and private equity. I really think that there's going to be some opportunities that could make us billionaires kind of opportunities. And I want to play. And that's where I see the next big change. So that's where I'm working. Now, that means a lot of data crunching, but not so much on the market making side. Yeah, well, so in the betting markets, so like here's the thing. Okay. When I'm looking at a market, one of the questions that I'm asking is, why do people execute in that market, right? Like when I come in here into the treasury market, there are all sorts of people that they have to have treasuries to do their business, period, right? So there's always that demand that's going out there. In other words, treasuries have utility in the financial system, essentially, right? Okay. So what utility does a betting market have? Well, for event betting, like political betting, for instance, you could potentially hedge yourself. If you own a company and you think that that company would be negatively impacted by a Republican winning, then you could go long the Republican so that the winnings from that would offset the losses that you would get from owning the company, right? Okay. The problem is that there's just those markets aren't big enough to facilitate that right now, and so people don't typically do that very much. You know what I mean? So and the reason for that, I think, is because of distrust in the exchanges. Like I said, Predicted is the only like semi-serious one, and they've kind of fizzled out and had some missteps that they're just not used very much anymore. Right. It's not until you get to that point, and then now you have somebody with a reason to be buying or selling a large amount of a contract in a betting market, and then you'd get like the met order thing, right? Now in the treasury side, though, those meta orders are there, and there's so much informational inefficiency that situations where you can front run those orders before they come happens all the time. Today, probably not one of those situations, because I think it's been some weird stuff driving the flow today that at least I was not aware of ahead of time. But seems like a real hassle to even withdraw your money. Maybe. Anyways, so yeah. I think the thing is that people get. I think you really got to fight against the desire to do the easy and or safe thing. Money is usually not in the safe thing, guys. I think that we look at day trading or market making as safe because we think, well, I should be able to make money just off of the spread, right? And then I should be able to come in and make money every day and every month and live off of it. I think that's what attracts most people to that scalping initially, right? I was interested in it because, number one, because I really wanted to see what was going on under the covers, and two, because it was the fast. It was like the adrenaline junkie sort of thing, which I found worked against me, and I had to fight against for a really long time, right? So once that point is gone, then you kind of come back to this, and it's like, well, but actually, we're like, where the real opportunity is in taking risks and in doing things that are hard, right? Like, running a private equity firm is not easy. It's a lot of work. Not a lot of people are willing to take that on, but I think I can. I might have no clue what I'm doing right now, but we will by the time we need to. So start saving up so that when it all happens, you'll be able to contribute like $10,000 or something into our fund. It'll be fun. It'll be like the first truly social media driven private equity fund. I think that's kind of what we're going for. And I'm gonna save up a huge chunk of change, I think. I just have to really really hold back my family's desire to increase spending. But we've done a good job of that so far, so you will definitely invest. Thank you. You know, I don't know. Like I this is one of those things where I'm afraid of the competition and stuff, but yeah, I really think that there could be an opportunity coming up here that could change. You know, it's like when you talk about hedge funds, you know, there's been at times different game changers. You know? How many folks? Well, so far, I've just kind of been introducing the idea to people and feeling it out, and because I haven't like set up an official company or anything like that. But we're getting to the point where I need to do that. I guess I still need to go and create a name. One thing I was wondering about after reading the book is how multiple meta orders with opposite signs impact the market, since the analysis mostly, well, but no, the book. So the interesting thing is that the book does talk about that, but really briefly, and it's kind of between the lines, right? But that's where I get the inverse sign law, right? If you have a meta order, and then before the liquidity hole really takes form and solidifies, a meta order of the opposite sign comes in, you will that second order will have greater impact because of the wake left by the first, right? Because the order book hasn't had enough time to recover from that trend. And so that's where you can get these really fast reversals and stuff. And like a pattern that you'll see very often is you'll see a move down and then a reversal move that ends up being bigger than the initial move down. Well, not because of the surprise, but because of the damage to the liquidity that the first meta order did, right? So like the first meta order leaves a wake behind it. We're moving down. All of those offers are weaker than they normally would be because it hasn't had enough time to build up latent liquidity at those prices, right? So if somebody buys back the other way, it's going to go further because there's less liquidity. Yeah, it hasn't replenished. Exactly. So that's where I took a trade earlier today off of that, and it actually worked pretty good. But eventually this big flush down lower happened, which I think was unrelated, but probably having something to do with the Chinese yuan. But I digress. Yeah. So I think there is even a diagram in there somewhere where it shows it. Where they show it. Around what time? It was, well, let's see here. I think I started doing it at, I'll just look at when I actually opened it up. So 6:52 on my clock. 6:52 on my clock was when I entered it. Summit Trading, I'm pretty sure that Summit Trading is taken. And I don't think that it would be trading. It would be like funds or investment advisors or commodity trading advisors. Oh, I need to recenter that. The way that the book was looking was kind of scaring me, but then I realized, oh no, nothing's happened. You know, when I look at like TweetDeck and I'm reading around, it really seems like it's been a quiet day today. Like we've had quite a bit of movement in the markets, in the treasury markets, and in the currency markets relative to what we would expect from the news flow and so forth. So I wonder if we're going to continue to have a volatile week like we did last week. Oh, what part of the... Yeah, I live in Utah. Oh, we have the same time. Sapphire Seth. I think that I want... So the idea is that we're bringing professional investing to the masses is kind of the idea. Well, you have to take a test. Okay, you have to take a test to be able to get in, right? But we're expanding the group of people that are able to be involved in private equity, hedge fund, these kinds of strategies, right? So I'm looking for a name that I think has that kind of feel to it. That it is a popular uprising, a popular revolution in the financial world that brings access to an even greater number of people. I remember 500 per level, and yes, so everything looks volatile enough for me. Yeah, all the move up that we did get on the open was pretty decent. 10 points isn't terrible, right? Oh, by the way, somebody had given me a donation earlier about, that question, and I forgot to thank him for giving the donation too. No. What are you offering that has not been offered before? That sure sounds like something that is around and enough. Okay, so I am offering something that already exists, but not to you. Right? So if you wanted to invest in a hedge fund, you can't right now, right? If you wanted to get involved in private equity, maybe if you're lucky and you got told about, because there is like an option for like a certain number of people to get in on certain private equity sorts of things and stuff like that. But like a really good deal, like the sort of stuff that Y Combinator makes money off of, or like the next Facebook, you probably, it's not available to you, right? That's what I'm going to bring to you. And it's not so much as me as much as it is the government. So the government is changing the rules. It used to be that you're not able to invest in those things because you have to have a certain amount of money to do so, right? But they're changing it so that you can also invest in those things if you pass a certification. And so the idea is that we are going to create funds that specifically cater to those people that pass those certifications. Because even if you get the certification, you're still not going to be aware of private equity deals that are going around. You're still not going to have the minimum amount necessary in order to invest in a hedge fund. And so what we'll do instead is we'll pool it together. We'll say you can put in $1,000 to $10,000 in, and then we will bring those deals to you and invest in them as a pool. Right. So the exact specifics of it, I think, is something that would have to be worked out. But if, for instance, there was a private equity firm, right, what we could do is we could have, of course, contributors can all have the opportunity to make certain opportunities available to us. And then we can say, okay, here's a private equity deal that we have decided to invest in. and you have the opportunity to contribute more and get in on that private equity deal, and then all of the money that we raise during that deal, we go in and buy. So now there's going to be all sorts of crazy rules around securities and stuff like that, but this is something that you just couldn't even do before because nobody could contribute into it, right? And the bet that we're making is that even though those individuals aren't able to invest as much, you're going to have so much wider of an audience that compared to what you had before with private equity and hedge funds, that it could be a game changer. And we could be at the forefront of that. That's my idea. Okay, what's the difference? So a meta order is a large order that is split up and executed over time. So an iceberg order could be one way that you might execute a portion of that meta order, right? So like a meta order is like, okay, the Bank of Japan wants to buy 100,000 treasury contracts. Okay, well, I can't just buy 100,000, right? So what I do is I just kind of start buying throughout the whole day, right? And over the whole day, that will probably push things up, right? That'll probably push you up, but you don't execute it all at once, right? Now, one way that you might do that is you might be executing market orders into this, but then you might also have an iceberg buy so that if price does come down, you know, oh, that liquidity is there, and then you got a ton of contracts filled on the bid, right? An iceberg is a refreshing order where when that price is hit, the order immediately puts more contracts on. That's a refreshing or iceberg order. You're going to have to give me some explanation behind your suggestion, your name suggestion, Gustavo. But I'm already kind of thinking like it really needs to be, I don't know. So the issue I made, the mistake I think I made with the brand for this channel is Speculator Seth. Speculator is a long word that's difficult to say and or read. So it needs to be, yeah, I don't know. Maybe because he doesn't want anybody to go and try and steal the name. I'm not too concerned about it. You could just post it in chat. How can you see a meta order? You can't. Well, so what you can see is like after the fact, then you can come in here and you can look at what happened and you can say, okay, like look here in the 5-year. Pretty consistent trend down in cumulative delta, right? So there has been selling that has been persistently there the whole time. Pretty much the whole time, regardless of whether it was coming back or what, right? So that's probably somebody executing a meta order short. But the primary thing is to just know why somebody might be executing a meta order that day. Because there can be situations where you can predict them because of fund rebalancing or macroeconomic changes, news, all sorts of things like that, right? Yeah, I definitely wouldn't use speculator in the new name, not only because of the issues that I talked about, but also because, you know, what we're talking about is more investing than it is. I mean, what I do really is speculating, right? Yeah, he said Runfa, but I don't know what... That sounds like a video game, not an investment fund. Is there a company that allows individuals to pay a monthly fee to have their energy costs hedged so that if their energy costs go up, then we pay the difference from what they pay on average? No. So the issue with that is, again, that's a security, right? It's under venture with the expectation of profit or potentially making a profit based entirely on the efforts of somebody else, right? That's a security. So if you wanted to, pay a company a monthly fee to have your energy costs hedged so that if energy costs go up, they pay you back out, sort of a thing, that would essentially be you investing in a commodities trading pool, right? And so you'd fall under all of the rules for that, right? And it would be the same thing with us as a private equity, but I would run it just like your typical private equity firm does, or your typical hedge fund does, is just I'd be targeting a different group of customer. I mean, I would want all of the kind of customers that hedge funds already get, but then I would want all of these new people that don't have a whole lot of money to invest. Don't have millions to invest, let's say. The low liquidity on which instruments? I would say that the amount of liquidity that we have in most of these markets is pretty standard relative to the volatility that you have. So for instance, if you're looking at the S&P 500, there is just not nearly as many contracts per tick as there was before COVID, right? But the S&P 500 is like twice as high as it was, right? And so the amount of tick per tick volatility is higher. And as such, the amount of liquidity per price ends up being lower, right? Because you end up trading across more prices. Hate it when my nose starts to itch like crazy. Oh wow, it's 8:58. Well, yeah. So there are other things that will affect like liquidity overall, but then volatility is one of those things, right? So this is the same thing with the treasuries. It's like, there was a time before when it was like 3,000 contracts per contract, but the move index is a lot higher right now than it was. So I'm sure that if the move index comes back down, that this liquidity will probably increase. Anyways, I better get going. I will see you guys tomorrow. So no live trades today. I don't know. I tend to be a little bit more conservative second half of the month, so we'll see. And then we get into August again. But we do have a Federal Reserve meeting next week, right? So anyways, I'll see you guys tomorrow. In the meantime, stay excellent.